everybody. Today I'm going to be reviewing the book Stories of Karol, The Unknown Life of John Paul II. There it is, John Paul, shaving right there in the front cover. It's written by Gian, Franco, Svidercoschi. Practiced multiple times, that is definitely my best attempt yet. So this book is about 150 pages long. It took me about 3 weeks or so, reading 10 to 15 pages a night. Not that long, pretty casual reading, so don't be afraid to go and reach out and try it. First thing I want to talk about is the writing style of Gian Franco Svidercoschi. Never read any of his other books before, and I assume this is translated into English, but he did a great job. The translator also did a great job. I felt like I was an extra character in the book at all times. So you go and start with Karol Wojtyla's life from birth to his papacy. That's what this book covers. And I swear I was just like in the other room when his father passed away, or I was also in the Living Rosary, which is a group that JP2 started as well. So the author puts you right in the book, makes all the characters very relatable. Like I would never relate to JP2 in the first place, but I definitely could relate to one of his friends as he goes on to there. So he did a great job with that. Next thing I want to talk about is what this book talks about. So now, like I said, this book starts from his birth with his parents to all the way up right into his papacy. And the events that's covered into there is the death of his parents, which happened at 2 separate times. His work in the theater, his manual labor that he had to go and do, him becoming a priest, him becoming a bishop ultimately, and then it's going to go and talk about probably the biggest formation of his life, which is World War II, and what happened to Poland during that time. Now, Poland was invaded by the Russians, and I believe the Germans as well. And I understand why Poland dislikes Russia so much. We currently have the Russian-Ukraine war going on, and I hear stories about how Poland definitely wants to get in there and aggressively defend its own borders in Russia. And I never quite understood that. I know Russia has been invaded multiple times by multiple different countries, and that they're sick of it. Now I understand why they have such an axe to grind against Russia, though. And the book will go into that, about the awful treatment they received from the Russians, and then how they kind of got left behind by the Allies after the war as well, as far as how dipping up things in the treaties. So you're going to learn about World War II, Russia. You're going to learn more about the awful things that the Nazis did. And you're going to learn a lot about communism and the awful things that it did in Poland specifically as well. So that's going to be the gist of it. JP2's birth to his papacy, Russia, Germany, communism. And now you're also going to learn a little bit about World War II strategy and what the Polish did during the war. They were taken out fairly early, but there was a resistance there. And they had a couple of small but major attacks or operations that played a major key in the war, turning the tides. So, something else you're going to learn in this book is that it doesn't really teach you anything about the teachings of Catholicism, but it will go and teach you about the Curia. Now, the Curia is the term we use to talk about the priests, bishops, cardinals, and the Pope, all the leaders in the church. They're called the Curia, and what they did in response to World War II and all the deaths that are occurring. So one thing I learned about is how the Jewish people would come to these priests and they say, "Hey, can you help us out?" And the priest's like, "Yeah, sure." So what they did is they forged fake baptismal certificates, so that if any Nazis come by, they're like, "Oh, are you Juden?" And they're like, "No, we're Catholics." And so they show them the fake baptismal certificates, and so then the SS will be like, "All right, well, we'll come back for you next month." Kind of a joke, but not really. The book also talks about how Catholic priests were being rounded up as well, and they were being sent to Dachau, I believe, is where their concentration camp is, specifically for Catholic priests. At one point, I believe Dachau became the biggest monastery in Europe because they just arrested so many Catholic priests and religious and put them all, brothers and sisters, and put them all into one place, as that essentially became a monastery. And many of them died. So the church, the book also talks about the church's response. One, trying to keep the Jews alive, trying to keep the own church alive. And then what the church's response after World War II was, when there's this huge, massive spiritual desolation going on. Arguably or not so arguably, the worst thing that ever happened in human existence was that right there. So you're gonna learn a little bit about what JP2's role was in that as well. So obviously kind of a grim topic, but it's about John Paul II, who's now Saint John Paul II the Great. So obviously, he rose up to the challenges and he met with the grace of God, and there he was. I'm gonna go ahead and give this book an 8 out of 10, mostly because I'm not really that big into biographies, but the writing style, once again, is amazing. The subject matter is amazing. I really didn't know much about John Paul II before this book. I remember when he was shot, and I remember when he did not die. Then I remember him forgiving the man who shot him, and then I remember how he died. So, other than that, I was a fairly young guy, and I was way more interested in Legos than the Papacy. So, go figure. But yeah, 8 out of 10, 150 pages, an easy read, great writing, great subject matter. It's gonna look good on a bookshelf as well. If you like JP2, this book's for you. If you like learning about World War II and the other sides of it, this book would also be for you. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.